Glad you're here. How's everyone's crop been so far? Nice, yeah, a positive crop. That's a good phrase, actually. We need to have positivity here. So we are really excited to have this panel about net zero campuses, specifically here in the UAE. So it's you might have heard of higher education initiatives in other parts of the world. This one's really going to be focused on these local conditions. My name is Tim Carter. I run a nonprofit based in the U.S. called Second Nature, and since 2006, we have run a carbon neutrality commitment by presidents and chancellors of universities in the U.S. So we have about 450 colleges and universities that have committed to carbon neutrality, and they have been working towards achieving those goals for 15 years. So my background is that experience, and I'm looking to bring just some of that perspective really to this panel. I think it was just kind of starting out in this net zero space. Like, how do we think about the net zero activity here in the UAE for higher education? How do we think about network design? Like, what do we do together that we can't do on our own? It's a super important part of this. And how do we launch something that actually doesn't end at the end of some announcement? Like, how do we actually have longevity to the commitments that we make? So I'll just introduce our panel quickly. We have Julia Carlo, who's the acting head of sustainability at American University in Sharjah. Is that right? I usually ask people, what is one thing that the public doesn't know about you that you would be okay with them knowing? Can you share something?
You mean about my personal life?
Yes, so me, well, I'll give you examples. Okay. Give me time to think, and then give you all that. All right. So I roast my own coffee out of a popcorn popper at home. And I love it, and it's hard to drink other kinds of coffee. So important. Very, very personal.
Okay, I'm from Germany, and I have a really hard time speaking German to my own children. I have 3 of them, and I prefer speaking English. So I don't know what that says about me.
Yeah, good or bad. Okay, our second panelist, Antonios. I'm going to butcher your last name. Valutis, who is the Director of Sustainability and Stewardship at NYU Abu Dhabi.
I'm from Greece. If we were saying something personal, so I'm from Greece, and I've been in the UAE for 14 years. I have been the prime minister of the government, and now I'm in Vietnam. I'm finding it easy to when in Greek, but I'm always worried about how to talk about that. I guess we're speaking out more languages than I can.
Okay.
It's only problem.
So it sounds like we have a translation service that will be providing to everyone at the end of this. Dr. Beatriz Garcia is the professor of international law at Sorbonne University in Abu Dhabi.
Something personal, so I'm based in Brazil, and as you may know, we eat rice and beans every day in Brazil, and because I'm very recently arrived in the UAE, I haven't found any black beans here, so if you have any tips, please let me know. Yeah, that's a challenge that I have recently.
Yeah. Okay, so need supply of black beans, translation services, coffee, I guess I could ship you something. Is that fair? Yeah, okay, good. What we're going to do in this panel is a couple of things. We want to really talk about what does it mean for campuses to have a net zero commitment and focus on decarbonization. What does that look like? And then we want to talk about what are the challenges associated with that. And this is not just technical challenges, this is challenges across the university. And then finally we want to talk about what are the opportunities. What lessons have we learned, but what are the opportunities really specifically here for this both individual campus activity and network activity to happen. The way we're going to do this is we're just going to have a conversation. We're just going to talk about it. We're going to be honest about it. I think there's a lot of a lot of things happen in COP where people declare things, and it's you get from point A to point B by going in a straight line, and point A to point B is never a straight line. There's always squiggles in the line. So we want to really focus on the squiggle. Talk about what is hard, what is difficult, what is challenging, and how do you overcome those challenges. And then lastly, we want to hear from you. We want to have a discussion with you about questions you might have about how this work can continue. So that's the format of today. So let's just start, dive right in and say, when we think about decarbonization, what are the big kind of technical pieces? Maybe, Antonius, I'll start with you. What are the technical pieces that you see as what does it mean to decarbonize?
Right, and thank you for the question, and it's a pleasure to be here. It's great to be here day 6 of a very important topic on energy and just transition into people. And it's a really great question because it's also great to think about it in a different way. Before we go into the technical tactics, the about what starts, right? And the number one key component in my opinion is first of all to have strong buy-in, stronger leadership. What do I mean by that? I'm very lucky to be the part of the work of the University that has the really strong focus on sustainability and provides us for previous material with us today. Developed the office of sustainability a couple of years ago, and I forgot to mention on the inaugural directors. And this is really important because when it starts with the leadership, strong buy-in, it really, I can say it's at least 50% of the job, right? Because then it creates that momentum around, developing a strategy and start working around different issues that we might face with other stakeholders within the company. And that's the second piece that I want to talk about. It's also maintaining momentum. When I started a couple of years ago, the main first task that we started with was to develop a time and action plan. That was a task that really needs and has in its core collaborations with so many different stakeholders. And this is where the buy-in and the vision from leadership is so key and important. Well, what was really backed up by our leadership. And then I started creating and formulating those plans in so many different divisions. And don't have to say it to everybody in the room. Facilities, procurement, all sorts of different stakeholders in the country. And it really takes a lot of time, to work with these different stakeholders and be there. The last piece I want to say is also, it's very important as well to speak about also determination of different stakeholders to see that climate action goes through. What do I mean by that? We can develop a plan, we can definitely put it out there, but what does it mean after that? What is just simply start for us? And we just launched climate action plan a month ago we are committed to carbon neutrality by 2050. We believe that it's really important that we maintain that momentum before stakeholders so we can start seeing the strategy and the different steps. So buying what the different stakeholders and then from there creating that momentum so we can start seeing that strategy is really important. So
Okay. Yeah, so well done. Great. Three things. Julia, did you add to that? What other things?
Well, maybe I can share our experience at the American University of China. I would say I agree with you. It starts with a leadership and a vision. Our former COO, unfortunately, has left the university. Really had this vision of this new version of sustainability office at the US, so very similar to your experience. And also, she was the one who urged us to launch a climate action plan in 2022, just as UAE made its 10-year by 2050 commitment, so to show our support. But leadership also needs this sometimes, and we're in this, not to speak about challenges already now.
We can go there, that's fine.
What do you do when leadership changes and that vision leaves the university? How do you keep the momentum? How do you adjust to maybe different expectations of new leadership? And how do you keep pushing for this?
Yeah. So that's one challenge on the leadership side. In the US, it's about 5 years that a leader lasts. So any of you from US universities, your leader's not going to get it. You're going to last longer than the president probably will be if you're a staff member. If you're a student, it's going to last about longer than like on average, they're not going to last that long. So leadership, while it's important to get it going, it also is important to recognize there's changes and actually an evolution in how that leadership manifests the climate action. So Beatrice, what about you? So we have leadership, we have buy-in from across campus, and then we have a mechanism for tracking. Is there anything you want to add to that? How do we get started on net zero?
Well, I think as you guys were mentioning, we have a plan in Socorro University. So we'll bring itself policies, a platform where things will be concentrating efforts towards common goals. So I think it's important to have those policies where we have common goals, we have a shared understanding. There are also some targeted measures that we want to achieve. Otherwise, it's easy to lose track of things, and as soon as you start feeling they were not achieving any outcomes. So I think that's quite essential for any university policy and strategy.
So what have you guys done on that? Yeah, what have you done on the goal setting side?
Yeah, so we have a few areas that we are focusing on, for example, recycling, government accounting, and I think it's the case for American University as well. And from there, start stepping up outcomes and individual goals to be achieved. So I think as we've discussed it before, it's very important to have something you are working towards, right? So that you don't lose track and momentum, as Antonio was saying.
So you all three have all of those things?
So I agree with Beatrice. It's really important that you, in order to manage something, and you need to measure it. You need to understand where you are now. And the challenge is to put numbers to our greenhouse gas emissions. And we just completed the third cycle of our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. And we have seen ourselves, our emissions are going up. But it's actually because we're much better now at tracking the data and relying less on assumptions, really defining the institutional boundaries better. And we made use of an external service provider to help us with this emissions tracking. It's really been helpful to have someone who can guide us in how to collect the data, how to report the data, and we make everything publicly available on our website so others can learn from our process.
In terms, how do you guys do greenhouse gas accounting?
Right, so we finished also our first cycle of calculating our emissions, and we have the very clear issue under scope 1 and 2. We're finalizing our strategy, and on carbon neutrality, we have a scope 1 and 2.
So some people might not know what those scopes are.
I take a step back, right, you're absolutely correct. So we need to go stop it, so much sometimes forget. So scope 1, very briefly, the fuel that we burn go from A to B, anything that we directly burn, that's kind of scope 1, so anything that comes from transportation, that we go from A to B, or any petrol that we use for generating, that's a scope 1. Scope 2 covers only emissions coming from electricity, right, so to open it, or the chill water that we use, which in the UAE it's so important, we don't have heating, we don't have cooling, so paying bill for the chill water that's coming to us, so that's also a big segment of our scope 3. Scope 3 is everything else: water, waste, food, flights, right? Goods and services. So we are finalizing our scope 3, especially where I find it more tricky is on the goods and services. And this topic that we will cover later on. How do you convert, the dollar amount of everything we spend to procure office supplies, cement, paint, whatever that might be, and convert that into emissions? This is really tricky because we are not the US, we're not in Canada, where emissions factors, right, are readily available. We're in the UAE, so how do you actually account for all of that? This is where it gets a little bit tricky. It's easier with electricity, it's not so easy with scope emission. But we do a lot of work as well on I'll stop there. We do a lot of work as well, especially on water and waste. On food, we have a clear target on reducing our food related greenhouse gas emissions. So drawing separate boundary around the dining facilities, looking into how we can start reducing their stock.
Yep.
But this is where it gets pretty fast, especially on scope 3.
Have you, from a policy perspective on accounting, is there anything that comes to mind when you think about like what is required of governments, what is required then maybe of the institutions within those jurisdictions?
Sure. So I don't want to go into too much detail, but essentially every country under the Climate Change Conference and Convention, Paris Agreement as well, all multilateral environmental agreements, countries have this obligation to report. So, for example, under the Climate Change Convention, countries have to report on their greenhouse gas emissions under Article 4, Paris Agreement under the national determined contributions as well. So this is something that we see at the international level. What we see happening as well is that countries are starting enacting legislation with mandatory reporting requirements for companies, for sectors. So, for example, we see that happening in Canada, in the United Kingdom, in Australia, in the United States as well, right? So what happens then is that we have this legal framework, national and national, where these reporting obligations become the norm, become something that has to be done, right? And I think eventually this is going to get to our sector, to the university sector. something that won't be heavy to do anyways.
Yeah.
So I think something like the American University is doing is a bit, going that direction, where this is something that will become the norm really for our sector, I guess.
Yeah, and it seems like an opportunity for y'all to work together on not having to replicate what standard maybe you guys have used, and could you share that best practice with the other universities? Another opportunity, something we've seen in the US, is actually using the students to do these greenhouse gas inventories. It's like an amazing learning opportunity. Instead of, I appreciate outsourcing it because it's very, very difficult and complicated, right?
Yes, but it is a financial commitment that not all the leadership maybe sees as necessary.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but it's so critical. Like, I think one of the things we've found in 15 years is that if we didn't track those data for our campuses in the US, the commitment would have started and then completely gone away. But the fact that we have 15 years of either progress or not progress really helps the initiative have momentum. So an encouragement, I think, to say as you start out, there's probably an opportunity to think about accounting not just as something I have to do to check a box, but a way to engage with your student populations and maybe start to design curriculum. Amazing. And that introduces a number of challenges. So when we think about challenges, some of them are technical, some of them are cultural, some of them are social, some of them are legal. So we can, let's just have a conversation about the broad breadth of challenges of implementing a goal. So a vice chancellor says, I want this to happen. Now you're scrambling to actually account for it. And what are the big technical things that you have found here that are maybe beginning to get in your way, or you haven't been able to overcome yet, or you anticipate being an issue to accomplish this big goal that you're starting to?
Sure, I'll
We've been discussing this for quite some time.
I can leave the room.
Oh, it's
I need to go soon. Yes, I'll start with some internal challenges. So, buy-in, as you mentioned, we have to really create awareness for all the stakeholders that we rely on for data collection as well. Like, how do we get everyone in the organization to understand that this is something important? And because it is on top of their workload, right? They have to give us the data. And it's not easy. We don't have an IT infrastructure to support the data collection. It's all manual. It's very tedious. And I have my colleague sitting here in the back who has the brunt of it. It's really not easy. There's not a lot of support, neither technical nor moral support really. But it's important to get everyone on board and contribute. And make sure they understand this is also a long-term project. It's not something we do once and then we're done with it.
Sure.
And we have to keep getting better at it. Also, it's a learning curve for us. We learn every year, we learn more. And the data gets better, which means right now our emissions are going up every year. I think now we are at a point where we have a pretty good understanding of our emissions. And now we need to go into phase 2 and really think about how do we break down this 2050 long-term target into near-term or even medium-term goals and initiatives and strategies, and that's going to be the next big challenge.
Do you find the connection with UAE's targets through the NDC to be a connection there is difficult, or is it pretty easy to see how you might map to the goals?
So we are also, all of our universities are part of UACA, the UAE Alliance for Climate Action, which helps us a lot with putting accountability to our commitments, but also gives us credibility because they're very aware of greenwashing and institutions making big announcements and they're not following up with actions. So this really helps us keep the momentum here in the UAE. I find that UACA is not just universities, it's also a lot of private sector companies. So it really combines all non-state actors in the UAE for climate action. And universities are very different from production entities. Yeah? Our greenhouse gas emissions profile looks very different. Actually, our scope 2 emissions are by far the highest. So I think we're going to need very different strategies than, for example, Procter & Gamble or Unilever or a construction company. So I think we need to work together within this bigger community to find our niche and define our playing field.
Right. So this is an interesting kind of point, maybe a meta point would be the role of higher education relative to other sector leads that are within a context of the country. And the work maybe that you're doing here could actually bring others along because it is fairly new. You could be really progressive, thoughtful about how are we going to push a boundary as higher education. We're innovative. You know, we're trying to really accomplish something in a forward-looking sense because you're just getting started. And then others within Muwaka could say, okay, this is what higher ed's role could be. That's different than us. Like we are maybe on the supply side or on some other aspect of accomplishing this goal that we might have. What other challenges do you see?
Right. I echo what Julia says, especially on the data collection piece. You know, that subject really tricky to me, so I'm going to stop there because Julia has covered that, but it's really key because without the data, there's no way you can set a target. There's no way you can identify how you. It's the basis of everything. Right. Now, I echo also the piece in relation to WACA and how we all come together, not only as institutions but also with other organizations. How UACA is acting as a convener to put all of us together and share experiences, but also start putting some, especially on the data piece, and we podcast mission strategy that I mentioned, some data there for all of us to share. One more point that I would like to make is also that we started last year with the University Climate 2014, which is a conjoining initiative that we started humbly with 11 universities, including American University, Charles the Sorbonne, the first cohort, and the Vice Chancellor, to bring together all of us, majority of us being young institutions here in the UAE, to start discussing about how we can all collectively showcase and start discussing different ways of collaborating in research. You know, you can engage in among many other things, but of course one of the strongest pillars and most important pillars is how to take the climate action. Right amongst these universities now, we're 33 universities with about big even 7 or 8 in the pavilion right next to the water pavilion, and we want to discuss how we can promote climate action across the other universities. We have started on our journey for carbon neutrality. We want to help other universities to do that, and it's really important that we have those open discussions, especially at the top, and we're very proud that this is a COP28 endorsed initiative. We are discussing this here.
Well, I would like to mention aspects related to teaching and research as we are in universities. I think that one aspect is the teaching. I think students have to maybe have an understanding of what is happening, what is the UNESCO to see, what is Paris Agreement, what are they trying to achieve, right? What have us achieved so far? And I'm telling you that because I had an experience at the university where I was teaching to environmental science students, and I was talking about the climate change convention. All started in 1992, and then the Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement, and they said, oh my God, it started all that started such a long time ago, and we know nothing about it, right? So I think it would be important. It's a challenge to, I think, incorporate that knowledge and understanding in our curriculum, our university curriculum. I think that's one challenge, and also research, I guess. I think we all need to have innovative, good research, and for that we need funding, we need investment. So in many countries we have these strong research councils. We have here the UAE International Research Foundation. So it's important that it is a mission for those councils to fund good research, to allow academics, students as well, to do innovative and good research in climate change mitigation and adaptation. So I think these are important areas for us to work on, I guess.
So let me pick up on a different thread with a challenge, and these are really, that's a great opportunity, is to say, and a challenge to say, where is the funding going to come from? Sometimes this might be the peak moment. COP28 hosted in your country for climate, and so you are obviously wanting to take advantage of this moment. One big challenge is how do you extend beyond this moment? How do you make this last through time? So how have you even begun to think about that? Like what is the first steps in that process that you said, okay, I know COP28 is going to catalyze us all here. We're all going to be excited. We're all going to be exhausted at the end. And then how do we not just like, oh, that happened, that was great, we moved on. How are you thinking about that?
For me personally, just the fact that COP28 is hosted here and it led to the University Network being founded. For the first time, we have this engagement between universities in the UAE, and that has been already in those few months that we have the network has been so impactful. We're actually talking to the university right next to us in Florida. It has been impossible to talk to for years because I don't know why, to be honest. But we are actually meeting the right people. They come from the same room. We're meeting the right people to talk to. That might be one of the reasons to actually get to the right person. And there's this willingness to collaborate because we all face the same challenges. And how do we work together to advocate for higher education in climate action? How do we work together to agree on what we want to achieve?
Yeah.
And I really hope that this connection and collaboration will continue.
Yeah. So maybe the longevity piece is these relationships that are being built that maybe it was like, oh, I'm not going to actually attend that waiting around, I'm not going to reach out to that person, but now it happens, and now you build on that. What other opportunities or challenges might there be from this moment passing by?
Well, I teach environmental law, so the topics will go out of my life for sure. But I think it's a matter of, engaging the student community. I see a lot of students so interested in doing something like participating in the call and getting engaged. So I think we should take that opportunity. Students, they want to become the solution makers. So I think this is something we should work more on, going forward. And I think as Julia is mentioned, we now have that network in UCN, and it does give us that bonding. We didn't have that before, and it does make a difference because we now have these personal relationships, and we can work on that. We have no who to talk to, and all these things are very important, I guess. Yeah.
I just want to reflect, and I echo Kay's points, especially on the UCN piece. I mean, it's become super important to have those dialogues with the right people, always to the university. But that's also, I think, one key important is this financial aspect, right? Then, I mean, going back to the climate action plan, setting them up, like, you might have all the data in the world available today, you might set up a target, right? And you might start seeing, start looking into how you're going to implement it, without the finance piece, right? It's going to become really tricky. And this is where, one of the things we're trying to do also with our government partners is also start changing the mentality of CapEx versus, the life cycle cost of implementing anything. And what do I mean by that? We've seen it many times that people start thinking about investment as comparing one system versus the other, cost versus less cost, right? Making the less costly option as saving money, which is, sorry, that one also triggers right now. I'm not going to say anything. But it's really important to start looking at the life cycle of any investment. Say, I'll take the simple example, change the lights in LEDs, right? Which is the obvious thing that we all should be working on. We need to be looking at what's that year that we're hitting, right? That we're taking our money back. And then looking at the life cycle, the next 10, 15 years of that system, of that life, whatever. How much money we're actually saving? We can invest will be here for decades, right? Why are we doing that reason? How do we transition to that? I mean, we know that tariffs will go higher in the UAE. We pay much lower compared to the US or Europe per kilowatt hour in the UAE. So the cost will go up beyond the emissions per se. So it's also, and sometimes we also forget about financial sustainability. So investing and looking into that from reducing our emissions perspective, also safeguarding, the next year's budget, for example, is not something way to go for. So that's one way to look at it. The second piece is also when finances are not allowing us to do local influence, we need to go into more investments, say, deep dive retrofits for going to, for example, installing renewables on our campus. This is where I think it's also important to look into other ways of finding finances to be exposed more. For those of you who might hear the term for the first time, ESCOs are the energy services companies that come to you, do a quick inspection, propose a set of measures, they do all the financing, but saying that you used to pay $100 a month for your electricity, now you pay $80, they recover this $20 every month, and for 5, 7, 10 years they get their money back. So that's another way of, and that's also getting track here in the UAE of how we can tap into that funding, and especially for these big ticket items. I think that universities can work with them and start finding ways of getting more finance, which I think is also going to get tricky after we also knock out all these factors.
Yeah. So you're getting the challenges and opportunities. So the opportunity for finding funding is not just same old spot, but being creative about that. I know we have a number of people from Ohio State here, and they have engaged with a corporate partner, NG, a number of years ago to basically like create this
Right.
pretty innovative, and at the time it was one of a kind of model for energy services that also helped them
Right.
meet their goal, even a more, I think, sophisticated model than ESCO's. I want to say one thing about the network of networks, and that is the UACA is part of this global network of cross-sector climate action groups. So when we're in the US, it's called the America's All In Coalition. It used to be called the We Are Still In Coalition when President Trump took us out, and now we're not out anymore, so it's just America's All In. And that group of cross-sector partners exists in countries all around the world. So UACA is actually itself not operating in isolation. And there, I think, could be some interesting synergies between the UACA model, the higher ed institutions here, and potentially ones like ours in the US. And what could it look like for us to collaborate across these networks and using these cross-sector learnings in order to share that information might help us overcome, maybe some barriers that we just identified, either financially or technically or relationally. Let's kind of wrap up before we start to get into questions from the audience about really opportunities. We really are starting to touch on that. I don't want to end on challenges, that's a bummer. So what do we think about on the opportunity side? Maybe let's start with some of the best practices that we're seeing, some institutional best practices for reducing emissions. Do you see opportunities here that may be distinct within this context that you would want to take advantage of, or just opportunities in general that you see around this emissions reduction on the technical side? We can start with you.
Yes, I think just reflecting on what you just said in your introduction, like learning, we don't have to invent everything from scratch.
Yeah.
We have to be smart, because time taking, and look at other networks and what they have achieved, what we can learn from best centers worldwide. But then keep in mind we need to probably adjust it to the local context.
So what does that look like here? That's so important.
So, I mean, I know in the US, heating and emissions from heating on campuses is a major
Yeah,
but
it's
what?
very hard to decarbonize.
So we don't have that.
Yeah.
Everything is purchased electricity. So how do we lower our prices when there's no infrastructure around us for solar or other low carbon energy sources? Do we build our own? Do we work with the local authorities to promote more low carbon energy sources? Do we just work on offsets to minimize the impacts? We need to, this is something I think we share here in the UAE, and we will have much more impact if we come together and suggest something jointly. I think we'll have much more ways than if I grew up in my area. What do you think about it?
Right. There is power, so an opportunity might be, we know energy systems, we want it to be slightly different than it is now. We know that in UAE is very different type of energy system than the one in the US, which in the US a lot of places actually are private, like they're deregulated markets. And so the way that energy is distributed and created in the US is different than here. And so in your context, how do you approach that conversation with both confidence and reality to make sure that you're able to accomplish your goals? Because like you're saying, so much of it is, versus electricity is a big part of your, if you're gonna meet your goals, you gotta figure out that.
It's 70% of our emissions
Yeah.
if we don't tackle that.
So together, you're saying the opportunity might be together, and maybe with vice chancellors and other senior leaders, you could affect this policy conversation. Is that fair?
Very fair. If I, just to zoom out just for a minute, for those that are not really radio here for just a few days for COP, it's really important to highlight that we are part of the country that has set the net zero by 2050. Very clear value, right? I think one of the opportunities there, also, or positive, if I might say, messages is that we're not the only ones also going for that journey, right? The country is doing significant investments in nuclear and solar to decarbonize the grid, that we hope and we believe that strongly that before 2040 that will be feasible, right? So that's a part of the journey that we're going with government in that respect. We are looking into also, for example, so many other sectors that the country will do significant investments in electric vehicles, for example, and having more charges, so that will be part through the clean grid eventually. So for me, this is an opportunity that we need to capitalize. Again, going back to the break, is how we all network work now. And identifying those units is very important. One other thing that I want to highlight, I think is also what you mentioned, in new resource versus offset or solutions, I think one of the challenges that we face, but I believe that will change soon, is that at the moment there is no legal framework in place that allows us to go and become small producers in essence, so that we can sell back the electricity we produce, so therefore the electricity that we're consuming. And although we know that there's a significant investment from the country in that direction, we would love to contribute, right, in any possible way. For example, we don't have the land in the way we've done, for example, to the investment and consume the energy within the current system. We will help you do that model. So right now the framework is not there. We hope that will change eventually, because it's not only us. Eventually, every organization that reduces their utilities consumption to a point, then the remaining is either offsets or and we prefer, and I think I'm speaking on behalf of the three of us, that we prefer not to go to the offsets model so much and become small producers and contribute to that national level. So I think that's something that eventually will change, will have to change. And yeah, we are so eager to see also over the coming years and post-COVID how that net zero strategy will materialize into different smaller, very important strategies in different sectors. And start to see how that will materialize.
Teachers, so we'll talk about opportunities with policymakers and kind of on that side, when you think about from the legal perspective, what do you see there?
Yes, I think another way that what Nicole was saying, there are binding and non-binding obligations or requirements, right? So countries may or may not have those binding obligations to reporting, to disclosure information, to the disclosure of information. So I think that's the situation here. There are some of those things that are not legally binding. So for example, universities are doing it because they believe that it's important to be done, right? So this is in a way a challenge, because it's almost like an extra work that we are doing, really out of our goodwill in a way, right? But when these things become binding and everybody has to do it, sectors have to do it, then it becomes a different story. So this is a challenge, I guess, that we may need to face.
How do you turn that into an opportunity, though?
An opportunity,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think, also back to what you were saying, Antonio, I think if I see what's happening here in this country compared to other countries, I come from the global south, and what I see is that countries, they have targets, they want to transition to clean energy and all that, but all those things require money and funding and investment. And many of those countries in the global south just don't have it. It's going to be very complicated. But here, the situation is quite different, because we have that capacity, funding, even the know-how as well, to build that know-how in this country. So that makes a very big difference compared to other countries that have similar challenges.
And maybe an opportunity, again, to lead globally by, hey, resources aren't a constraint. Maybe we could actually share more of that with those that are in these other places. One other opportunity I was hoping to talk about is kind of on the network side. As UCN gets built, you all are from American University of, Sorbonne University of, NYU of. I had the opportunity to talk to the University of the UAE about a month and a half ago. Could you speak a little bit to the difference between your institution types and those of the like the federal universities that are here, and how do you see those opportunities to collaborate between those different structures? Do you see it as an opportunity? Are there in the U.S.? So think about that. In the U.S., there are many, many different institution types, and sometimes that means institutions just work with the institution types that are similar. So the big research universities, we just compare ourselves to big research universities. Community colleges, we just compare ourselves to community colleges. Small local arts schools, small local. And the intersection between those two, what we call complementarity, doesn't exist intrinsically. Like, it's very hard to get people to think outside of their own lane, but the opportunity is so great. The fact that community colleges in the US at least really focus on workforce development is very different than a focus primarily in research universities, which is all about how do we create new knowledge. And so how do you match those two together? That could be, oh, we're preparing new ideas that then actually get implemented with this workforce. Two different institution types working together. Do you see that as a possibility, or you see that, or is like there's 4,000 universities in the U.S., not that many here. What do you see this network design opportunity? I tried to stall you.
No, absolutely. I think we all need to work together. And I think campus decarbonization is a topic that's
Universal,
yeah,
like can go.
applies to all universities here.
So how would it be different at UAEU than at AUS?
It's a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer.
I think, yeah, if I may, I think it's a little bit of a different ecosystem, and as you mentioned, we are happy that we're a smaller country, let's say, where we can work with all different universities, regardless of size or regardless of their national or us, and when you that, for example, we came to the way that we are both from Abu Dhabi, I might say sometimes. So I think we do face the challenge that you described so much, where you have the different smaller universities and the bigger ones collaborate with one another, or together. You said 4,000, the number is enormous. I think we are 99 or 98 members for the cases at what we're setting up at UCN. So I think it's more doable here from that perspective, and it's more manageable from that perspective. I think the challenge that we face more is that we're all young institutions, right? And it's a young country. It's a country that's 52 years old, right? And it became 52 a couple of days ago. And I've been living here for 14 years, which is, if you think about it, it's absolutely crazy. I've been here for a third of the country's existence, right? And I call this place home now. So I would say that as we are all now young institutions that have the key component of teaching and research as well, to me, through the UCN, through UA, through other ways of all of us coming together, I think it becomes so evident that if we just align objectives across the board, and this is a Sorbonne that works for next topic, comes together with the US for Abu Dhabi and finds out about one another. Believe you me, we made so many wonders that it's not a matter of money so much to say, it's about breaking the silos that we are all into, right? Academics, or faculty, or staff in the same university, and then zooming out to different universities, classes, and so on. I think this is where it gets super important now. And I'm so happy that the UCM is up and running for a year now, and which stay post-top, right? And we're so happy also to pass the baton to somebody else, because we're so tired setting it up,
Yeah.
if I might say, but also seeing also the perspective of the universities. Looking at that, I think this is where we focus in the UA ecosystem. This is some of the challenges we face here compared to, if I might say, 4,000.
It's a lot, right?
Good luck.
Great. What do you think about this?
When I see, I had the opportunity to, before starting Sorbonne, I was with NYU, I was teaching.
We miss you already, yes.
I miss you too. Anyways, what I realized is that, as you were saying, Antonio, is we do work a little bit in silence. So, for example, when I came to Sorbonne, I contacted my students and like, oh, we're doing all these events that they come in. I even had a student from NYU with helping me organize events. So just small things, but creating those connections and cooperation among institutions, I think is very important. And I don't think we have it. It's not ideal as things are at the moment. This is something we should work more towards.
Yeah.
A lot of work to do,
Yeah.
Or maybe, now you're in a formative stage of your network.
Yeah.
So what you don't want to do is lock things in right now without being flexible in how it evolves. So because if you do that, then there might be some evolution limitations, because you've created structures that then don't allow for change based on maybe some idiosyncrasies.
And this is where we go also to conflict with you and say,
Yeah,
sure,
so
work together to there, learn from you, and avoid making the same mistakes. As we're now developing the network, what is that we need to avoid? What is that we have to do better, right?
Yeah.
It's so important. We're correcting also, as UCA with other networks, we were inspired by the day from the UK lab, which was created and led by Cambridge in COP26 in Glasgow, and we're going to have an event, the main event that we all participate in on December 8th. In the morning and the evening, we have the network of networks kind of mixer, where we just want to meet with, given the COP opportunity for all of us to meet and start again making those discussions. I think it's super important. And this is what I want to share with the audience.
Okay, so we have about 13 minutes for questions, and we're gonna.
1 week, 13, all right.
Yeah, we have 1 and 15. We have 13s. Who has questions about or comments about the opportunities, challenges, potential network design pieces here? For these courses? Maybe say your name and where you're from.
Okay, my name is Yasin. I'm from Canada. I just had a quick question. So, in light of how complicated this issue is, what do you think higher educational institutions can do to combat climate change helplessness on an individual level?
17?
Climate change helplessness. Like students feel like that what they're doing individually doesn't really make a difference and everything like that. Even though there's smart targets and goals set by the institution, it doesn't really mean much if it doesn't translate to the students, right? So, what can higher educational institutions do for that?
I can go. Yeah, I was just moderating one of the groups on with some folks from LinkedIn, Autodesk, and some other folks who work for the higher institutions that they're doing work on educating, students, but not only students, but also teachers from the very early stage, from pupils, right, learning, becoming more proficient around that. And I think it's super important that beyond what we say, and I know there's a lot of bad news out there, for us as well, working in that industry, sometimes you can speak on behalf of you as well. I know that we were discussing a few of us at time. It's really hard to point, right? It's just tricky where we even start questioning ourselves, like, what's going on, and so on. It's not about just being positive per se, and I'm a positive person by nature. It's about also channeling that energy the right way, right? And climate spread can become really topic where, instead of helping the climate crisis, we actually accelerate it, because if we just stop it, we're going to do nothing, right? In reality, you accelerate the whole climate crisis. And I think what we try to do in the way of that is to work with students a lot and create those spaces where we can raise awareness and start giving them an opportunity to contribute. And with that management that we, for example, we developed kind of strong component about the behavioral piece, right? We want to make sure that through the behavioral mindset management institutes, and this is just simply changing the way in which we operate in our everyday work lives, our everyday lives, we can all contribute, and we can actually save 5 to 10%, right, from our emissions by all of us just change simple habits, right? Making sure that we have, for example, in the workplace education. So, we try to tell us, you go out of a room, you switch off your laptop. Just do it, switch off your lights, and just do it, right? If that collective piece, we've done a lot of benchmark exercises that can save us 5 to 10%. Thinking about it, it's actually a lot. So, I encourage everybody, really, if you can influence your surroundings, and by that I mean your home, your future workplace, if you're a student or your fellow students, we can, and if we all do that, once in part we all happen, it's not something that's just so abstract. I didn't zoom in and I've seen the numbers and we can all do great difference, right? That's good. I can keep going, I'll stop there.
Maybe I'll just add that the challenge we all face, and I'd like to acknowledge that we also face the same challenge. Something as big and complex as climate change, you won't see like a direct cause and impact, right? It's way, if there's anything that would be harder to tackle, I don't know, I can't think of anything harder to tackle. It's long-term, abstract, complex, interdisciplinary. So people, I think we have to understand how societal change, like the interconnectivity between individuals and society as a whole, and there's all kinds of feedback loops and how we impact each other. Just understanding you have a role to play, and everybody has a different role to play. That's something I really hope I get the students to understand, that an engineer has a very different role to play than an English literature major or an architect. But we all have a role to play, and everybody to find their role and know it's meaningful. And maybe you don't really always feel like you can see the impact right away, but things will change, and they have changed. I've seen a lot of change actually in the time that I've worked.
And yeah, so one last point. I think it's also important. Are you a student, if I may ask, or are you?
Yeah, I am.
You're a student, right? So I get a lot of those questions from students like, I want to work with build sustainability. What do I do, right? And I always tell the question back, like, what are you studying? Some people studying law, some people taking out of business, some people are taking something else. All right, if you're studying law, you can work on environmental policies, right? If you're studying government business, you can go and work with finance. If you're a civil engineer, you can go ahead and start building more smart or, green building. So one thing that the guy from LinkedIn that I just moderated with was saying is that there is no job that's not actually a green job. By designing, for example, the new Xbox or PlayStation, but if you manage to make it a little more efficient, for example, let's say 10% more efficient in energy, how many consoles we have out there? So you're a product designer, but all of a sudden you're contributing to global purpose. I think this is where we need to start thinking more broadly. Every job, to my mind at least, or almost every job will be a climate job. We also need to think about it from that perspective and how we can make contributions all up to us in my view.
Teachers, I mentioned you have all these law students, or you're teaching policy and law, you have to.
And my experience is, that's a very good question. I have two reactions. I have to teach environmental law, and every year is tougher for me, right? So I have two reactions, like climate anxious students say, oh my God, we're all going to die. The situation is getting really bad. Or students having that attitude of the problem is too big, I'm not going to solve it, right? I won't do anything about it. And I think the antidote for those two reactions is really action. I think when you do something about it, you end up getting excited about it, and you can make a difference. So I think, as you're saying, what is the role of you're asking, what is the role of universities? I think universities have to maybe create those spaces where students can do something, can put things into action, so that we don't have those two reactions, or we can combat those reactions. And it happens with all of us. Sometimes we get even desperate about the state of affairs, right? So I think it's really a matter of creating those opportunities for students to engage and make a difference.
Yeah. So in the U.S. at least, the senior leadership responds to two things. They respond to students and they respond to alumni. Because their job is to raise money and save money. And if you, as students, recognize you have that power, you can do a lot. So you can say, we want to advocate for the goal setting, the ambition. Or we want to create some crazy ideas that someone's going to pay attention to. I mean, we were just on a previous panel with the president who said all these students came up with these like pretty wild ideas, and half of them were nuts, and then half of them were actually like, wow, we never thought like that. I think students are so important to like push the envelope for what is possible in your thinking, because you're learning it for the first time, you're bringing fresh eyes to this stuff. So your university leadership is going to listen to that. And the more that you can have staff that can say, oh, okay, we're going to work with students, we're engaged with these new creative ideas, it's going to be more, even more effective and powerful, probably empowering the student populations. Another question?
Yes, Bart Elmore from Ohio State University. And thanks to Second Nature, we have a lot of students here from Ohio State who are here. I'm really curious about this GCN and thinking about accountability. As you join this organization, are there mechanisms in place to use that work to make sure that you're all holding each other accountable? And are there systems in place to say, look, if you don't meet this, I'm thinking about what we're here for, hey, if you don't meet these standards, we want to see you in that kind of ratcheting up effect. And I think it's time to, is there something like this? I mean, I think about UC3, but I'm thinking, is there something that, as I think about the students in the room, could Ohio State join an organization that says, hey, Ohio State, you need to step up. These are the things you need to abide by, and have some kind of third party that's trying to say, hey, we want to see you do this. So I don't know if there's mechanisms in these that's not there or not.
I really see this UACA network more that entity that will be the one in charge of accountability and gatekeeping. Who gets to join? Are you really serious about this, or are you just releasing a press release on this COP, right? So we all need a press release. So for the UCN, we have our big meeting on Friday. We are in this very early initial stage to define really what it is that we want to do after COP. So COP is a big catalyst for making it happen, and now we need to work on the legacy. And it will be interesting to see if it's only university institutions that self-manage the network, how do we keep each other accountable, right? So with UACA, we have WWF and with Nature, who's holding us accountable. Which I think even a university as ambitious as ours needs that push to make follow up with action and to deliver on what you promised you would do. So it will be interesting to see if the ESA can provide that.
No, I agree, and just to amplify a little bit what you were saying, I think also, you're saying, just to clarify, we didn't try to create another UAE, right? This was not our intention, but more to focus on the academia of the UAE, not only in relation to climate action, we have also research, strong research components in our collaborative event, with engagement, cumulative measures, and of course, you know, our fourth pillar, and very strong pillar as well, is advocating for climate action. I hope, and I'm very hopeful that eventually, fine, everybody got the same thing? Okay. I will try. I sincerely hope that eventually post-COP, we can start creating at least some kind of, this is my dream, right? Create some kind of, at least, internal mandate, I can call it, where at least we can start reporting what's going on across the universities, right? But I want to say, and it's very, just very tricky from university to university to actually set a target for everybody, but at least asking everybody to report and create target, whatever that is. 30% by 2030, start from somewhere, right? 40% by 2035, or making this up. Setting a target, that would be my dream for UC. So all UC and members eventually can start reporting and can start setting a target, starting even humbly, starting to do it. Not only universities have that interest, that sort of sustainability, but something as well as I think also gets traction. I think more and more universities are becoming accountable to their own students, and the students coming to us are advocating for that, right? I'm happy to say it, sometimes also desperate. Every time they come to me, they ask for more, right? So they keep me on my toes, so that I never relax. Like now, every time I ask my say, no, right? So they actually just, the next thing we have our students is not very committed. There's more ideas, right? So this is super important. You know, creating that momentum, going back to the beginning.
Yeah, just any thoughts on this? Okay.
Very well explained.
Yeah.
But we do hope we can inspire other universities to start the emissions reporting and learn from our model.
That's why I think the two categories would be negative and positive. Like, how do you, like, maybe set a floor or set a standard? That's a negative incentive for participation. And then the positive incentive is, look how great they are, I want to be like that, you know? So network, you know, there's maybe table stakes, you got to be ambitious to get in. But once you're in, and if you don't do that, so what we do, we kick people out. Like, if you don't report or contribute to the network in any way over a course of 2 years, you get booted out. And so you have table stakes, but then we highlight the leaders. We celebrate the champions. We say, hey, look at this great activity. It's not the same institution type. It's not the same things that they do. But the activities that we think are really pushing the needle in alignment are the things that we, you know, want to celebrate, and that provides a positive incentive. I think we are out of time. So I just want to thank the panelists. This has been really fascinating. First of all, learn about the context here. I think it's really important for us to understand the global world that we're living in and relative to our work, and the contribution that you all have made in these questions, and hopefully we stimulated some ideas for you. So thanks a lot.
So you are going with this.
They all just be nice. We're doing report round.
You know, we're getting started. I want to see what you need to know.
Let me get to this side. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, please, here in the camera. 3, 2, 1.
One more.
Again. Here, 3, 2, 1. Okay, on the video now, sorry.
Let me please.